Call to order for the Bartlett Economic Development Commission for the August 12th, 2013 meeting.
Jerry Cabasso.
Present.
Cecilia Green.
Present.
Donna Weir.
Present.
Robert Perry.
Here.
Nayan Mehta.
Present.
Jim Russell.
Here.
Jeff Petro.
Here.
Tracy Smadilla.
Here.
Mike Sobel. We have a quorum.
The next item on the agenda will be the approval of the July 8th, 2013 meeting minutes.
Make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes from the July 8th, 2013 meeting. I'll second. Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda will be the continued discussion on Metra commuter outreach from downtown businesses. We'll have a staff report right now.
Thank you, Jerry. Little quick background information on this for those new audience members who hadn't been at the previous meetings. This issue was initially referred to the Economic Development Commission by the village president and board of trustees at its June 4th meeting. The EDC then held a preliminary discussion on this issue at its June 10th meeting and went over a few items related to better linking Metra commuters with local downtown businesses. At that meeting, the primary item that was agreed upon early on in the meeting was to improve the signage at the Metra commuter parking areas, alerting customers as to when they can park free of charge. Also discussed at that meeting was the possible placement of sandwich boards at both Metra platforms that could be used to promote various events and specials being offered by area businesses from time to time. The EDC directed staff to invite additional outside parties to comment and to weigh in on this issue. And as you recall from last month, invitations and information was sent out to local businesses, to the Chamber of Commerce, the Heritage Days Group, area resident commuters, and a representative of Metra to answer the questions that the EDC had regarding what types of promotions we may or may not be able to do at the station and the platforms. If you recall, last month there was a staff report outlining my conversations and communications with Jim Bonastali, who's Metra's Director of Marketing. We discussed at length things that the village may be able to do, and some of those included the sandwich boards, which he said we may be able to place on the platforms. All of these, he said, we would forward our request to him at the conclusion of these meetings when we decide, or when the EDC decides what exactly we are going to be requesting of them, if anything. He said that we may be able to scroll messages on their digital reader board at the station. No other towns or outside agencies at this point had ever requested to do that, so we may end up being the first ones to request that. One thing that he stressed that the village cannot do is any form of advertising that would conflict with Clear Channel Outdoors' exclusive license agreement with Metra. So they are the only ones allowed to sell and place advertising along any of the Metra lines at this time. The EDC also suggested that staff contact village representatives from other communities that have similar sized downtowns. And if you recall, what we found to be common was somewhat of a disconnection between the commuters and local businesses in the area. And there were also a few differences from what we've been experiencing in Bartlett. As you might assume, they reported that convenience uses are the most utilized. However, the vast majority of commuters in these other communities don't patronize the local businesses to a great extent. The one thing we heard from the village of Barrington that was interesting was that holding events in their downtown in the Metra station area on Thursday nights has led to some success in terms of drawing some additional patrons to their nearby businesses. So at the July 8th meeting, the EDC heard testimony from several downtown business owners and residents. Their testimony is included in both the meeting minutes, which I hope you've had a chance to read through, and some of their ideas are also outlined within this memo. Some of the issues brought up included the types of businesses that were desired in the downtown area, traffic safety issues, signage, and more aggressive marketing on the village side to promote the downtown area. During the course of these two discussions, a few of the commissioners, the newer commissioners, Tracy Smodilla and Jim Russell, requested to review studies that have been previously completed regarding the downtown area. Both commissioners have asked at some point as to how a community would typically go about producing long-term plans to redevelop a particular area, and suggested bringing in experts to plan for long-term redevelopment. This leads to some of the attachments that you have in your packets. I'm going to quickly mention them. One of them is the original tax increment financing redevelopment plan that you can see was prepared by Tesca Associates back in October of 1986. This was one of the first times the village brought in outside experts to consult and to plan on long-term redevelopment. And this particular document helped guide the development of downtown Bartlett over the 23-year lifespan of this TIF. For the commissioners that were on the EDC, about 3 or 4 years ago, there were a series of hearings about extending the TIF for one additional year. So you recall we went over what could or couldn't be done utilizing TIF funds at length, and had about 4 hearings in a row like this, where we invited the public to weigh in, and we went over the TIF document extensively. The second document is the one with this color cover here and the fancy cursive writing. This is the request for developer qualifications, commonly known as an RFQ, that was issued by the village back in February of 2002. This RFQ ultimately resulted in the redevelopment of the former industrial area at Main Street and Railroad Avenue, right across the street into Bartlett Town Center, following the EDC's recommendation and the village president and board of trustees' ultimate selection of New England Builders as the developer for Town Center. So you can see right here, you can read through it and see this is the type of document that a village would typically issue when they're seeking redevelopment of a particular area. The third document, another color study here that says Bartlett Town Center Summary of Findings. This was completed in August of 2010 by Houseo Levine Associates prior to the termination of the Town Center TIF district. If you've read through this or looked at the findings towards the back, this culminated in a series of suggestions on how to improve the functionality and marketability of Bartlett Town Center. You have also at your seats a couple of additional documents I want to point out that have been requested since our last meeting. One of them is a listing of all the TIF facade rebates. Again, for the commissioners that have been on through the years where we had the downtown TIF, you're familiar with this. But for those of you who aren't, these were property rehabilitation incentives that were issued to property owners, and in some cases, businesses, in the downtown TIF district. And what these were are 30% rebates in terms of a total of amounts that were spent. So when you, for instance, look towards the bottom of the first page and you see, for instance, McClure Chiropractic in 2007 getting a $27,000 rebate, you could surmise that nearly $100,000 was spent in property improvements at that time. They would turn in all the documentation, lien waivers, contracts, and the EDC would review those. And it helped, as you can see by going through the many rebates that were issued through the period of the TIF, $850,000. So it was able to leverage private money by the property owners and business owners, but with 30% from the downtown TIF district. So that's something I wanted to point out as something tangible also that resulted from the TIF district. And last but not least, Commissioner Cecilia Green requested that some information be distributed tonight. You see she was able to locate a Bartlett Examiner article from 2008, at which time the village was studying the possibility to create a cultural center in the downtown. And the village at that time, via TIF funds, had engaged the assistance of an expert, and they did a cultural arts center feasibility study, and I have a copy of that as well at your seats. This is done in December of 2007. We realize you haven't had a chance to review this at this time, but it's an interesting study that points out, for instance, if you would go to page 4. It doesn't just talk about cultural arts. They did surveys to see how many times people were visiting downtown Bartlett in the past year, a survey of people within the community and also outside, and you can see that the attendance from people outside the community was very low in the survey. At many times, for instance, only about 12% of people hadn't come in at all. Only about 6 or 7% had come in 10 or more times. Village residents surveyed, 50% of them had come in 10 or more times into the downtown. Quite a few of them reported none, as you can see, or anywhere from 1 to 6 times. Listed the reasons why people typically visited downtown Bartlett. Number 1 being the restaurants. Number 2, characterized as business services. Number 3 is shopping. And also you can see in the next slide over, it talked about which communities people were most often patronizing. You can see Schaumburg topped the list at this particular time in this particular survey, followed by St. Charles, Elgin, Geneva, and a few for Arlington Heights. So we realize this is a lot of information once again, but some of the commissioners had asked about previous studies that had been done, what the village had done in the past to stimulate the downtown area, and here you have many documents in front of you that show that.
One of the slides, which I can't see at the bottom of page 5, it's too small print for me. What would bring people to downtown Bartlett? Can you read the results of that survey?
Oh my goodness.
I can read it.
Can you read it?
Yeah.
More or different restaurants top the list. That's at the very top.
More or different festivals and special events.
Yeah.
A cultural center with performances and exhibitions. More or different stores for shopping. Farmers market or similar activities. More convenient parking. More of different late night activities.
Such as a cafe.
Thank you. A cultural center with classes for adults, a cultural center with classes for children.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great comment.
That's the back of it.
And Jim or I would be happy to answer any questions you have about the staff memo or any of these documents.
You know, especially reading the previous studies, it kind of struck me just reading at home. We've been down this road many times before, and everybody faces the same problem. What do we do? And a lot of attempts have been done, including the thing across the street. And so, aside from some of the things we've come up with in the past 2 months, the signs, better promoting of it, I think it's pretty well agreed major national businesses are going to be on the free roads because that's what they want. And people that want to open business in this town are going to do so when and how they want to, and basically it's going to stay how it is, and I guess we just best appreciate what we got, which is a nice little town.
That is one way of looking at it.
Yeah, I understand what Jim is saying, but I'm also going to reflect back on some of the conversation from last month's meeting where we all agreed that we're not going to see major retailers in the downtown area, but again, our emphasis should be really on, the assets that we do have at hand, certainly the resources that are readily available to us, and also continuing to focus on building a community that's attractive for the smaller business or the entrepreneur. And again, while I, have not really had the opportunity to look at these studies in depth, I do see that common theme that, we're kind of going back to the same issue. But regarding the Cultural Arts Center feasibility study, I mean, clearly we're looking at a 6-year-old study, and since then, we've seen an increase in our population, and I think particularly with a younger demographic. We've also seen a rise in the concern about the overall financial health and business health of the community. So I think with that type of focus coming from within our own community, I think it's important for us to continue to redress, again, those resources that are readily available to us, and certainly underscore the assets that we have here. I did have a question. Excuse me, this is going back to the TIF.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, the TIF redevelopment plan and the TIF district is part of it's the outcome of an Illinois state statute as it relates to providing a vehicle for communities to providing financial incentives back to their businesses. Since this original document was prepared back in 1986, has there been any change to the Illinois statute that would preclude or perhaps allow Bartlett to reintroduce a TIF program?
There hasn't been any. Let me answer that in 2 parts. They're constantly changing TIF statute,
sure,
almost every month. There is nothing to preclude a town from doing a new TIF at this point, any town. And there are a list of blighting factors that an area would have to meet in able to make the state qualifications to qualify as a TIF district.
In addition to the blighting factors, isn't there some consideration that the statute gives to actual conservation of areas as well?
Yeah, there's 2 types of TIF, and one is considered a conservation TIF.
Would it then be beneficial for us as a commission and along with staff to continue a discussion of the National Land Preservation District that Joan Pleiss introduced to us at the last meeting?
It's not conservation in the same light as conserving historic properties necessarily. It's more trying to conserve the tax base that you currently have and to enhance it is probably a better way to...
Forgive me, I don't remember what Joan's documentation said specifically, but I thought there was incentive to towns when they actually pursued the national preservation
She was
Program.
referencing something called the Main Street Program.
Thank you.
And we've looked into it before, and the short way to describe it is it requires an additional new organization to be official, like a 501c3 type organization with staff. I looked it up quickly today, you know, anticipating somebody might ask, and it had estimated $45,000 to $100,000 budget, including staffing and implementing the various programs that they promote.
Is that annual?
Yes.
Well, this is kind of a public-private partnership, if you will, between the business community and the village, and where they do their self-promotion, and they, you know, there's a bit of historic preservation to it. It's the quaintness of the Main Street. It doesn't preclude us from doing that with a TIF, but with a TIF district, the TIF is more for providing the financial aspect of doing the redevelopment, if you will.
When you guys,
and targeting at a certain type of plan. For instance, you know, across the street, when they did this, and you'll, you know, paraphrasing a little bit, but basically the plan was to, you know, this was that industrial area there, and to try to redevelop it, because those businesses weren't going to be there forever.
When you
And
guys
so
did that
they had
TIF, was that based on like blighting, or, I mean, that sounds like a horrible term, but I understand what it means.
That's the term in the statute.
Right. I mean, so was that the basis that you could get that last TIF issued, was to go under the blight angle, or?
There's 9 criteria. You have to address all criteria. Blighting is one of them. Vacancy, tax rate decline, fair market value decline. There's a different criteria that you have to then prove, and you would have to go through a whole study that precludes a redevelopment plan that addresses all those items, and then, you know, declare, it would be something the village board would have to declare that we're going to do a TIF based on our study, and there's a findings of fact, and you address those different items. And then you actually adopt ordinances that approve the plan, approve the TIF district, notify the taxing districts that the increment's going to be frozen at this particular date and time, and that they'll continue to receive that tax dollar amount that they get at that particular date. And then as the increment comes in, ideally, and this downtown TIF, in the context of it, was very successful. It was a kind of I call it a pay-as-you-go TIF. We had items that we were going to improve, streetscape items, street improvements, sewer, water, purchasing land, and the village managed it in such a manner as they went through the TIF, the increment paid for those items as they came online. Not all TIFs are like that. Some of them you do a bond, and you pay the bonds back for the improvement. So there's a number of variables that you can include in this, and those are things that you have to address in your initial study. You have to hire, as Tony pointed out, an independent objective analysis by an outside consultant.
Well, I know when I came to you guys' annual TIF meeting last month, and Donna was on the panel, it got me thinking, especially when I talked with both of you after the fact, and got the gears going, and I thought, we're working on this. I wonder if in some way would we qualify for another downtown TIF under some criteria. You know, maybe that would be a way to create stimulus for existing businesses to bring in new business. I don't know.
Well, again, as your task here is to do a recommendation to the village board. If that was one of the recommended items, then the village board would have to consider that, say, laundry list, if that's how it's going to come out, or list of recommendations, and consider that. And then if that's what they consider as creating and going and doing that study, then they'd have to allocate the funds to do the study, and we'd have to do we'd be directed to hire a consultant to do that initial analysis. It would come back to you, because as the EDC, those things typically come back, and then if the study proves out that this is qualifies as a TIF, it meets all these criteria, blighted being one of them, vacancy rates, those types of things, then we could, it's feasible to
Are all those
create.
studies expensive?
They're not cheap.
Yeah, they're,
I think, I was just looking at the cost of this cultural arts study, and not saying that the TIF study would be comparable, but I would suggest this one was $23,000.
they're about
You're
eight,
not-
yeah.
It's a pretty thorough analysis, but I can't remember we've created some over the years, but they're not all that expensive, but depends on how in-depth they are.
Well, I think we need to be pretty clear about what we want before we engage another paid consultant. And I
Well,
think
again,
that-
it's your recommendation to the village board, they would be the ones ultimately that would decide whether or not they would go that route, but there's a cost to it, yes.
I think it really goes back to, just really somewhat testing more of the mettle of our residents and the businesses here, and again, even rather than introducing a new TIF, perhaps we really asked the already not-for-profits that we have in town to, again, go back or come back and form a, private-public partnership in making this happen. And I think that, again, as I had mentioned before, if we look at the synchronicity that could exist between the available financial resources through the village or even the state as it relates to grants, in our organizations like the Bartlett Historical Society, certainly the Arts in Bartlett, I think we can bring a lot of these resources that we have together and this time around kind of build a better product and be really, really creative with the resources rather than, throwing money at another consultant.
I have a question regarding the TIF that you did mention was highly successful, and it feels like there was great use of it by the businesses. Would you say that it was clearly more for businesses that were already here, that they were kept, or was the TIF successful in bringing in new businesses?
In the early stages, it was used primarily to redevelop properties that were in bad need of redevelopment, like Bartlett Plaza was able to build a second phase with the assistance of some TIF funds. The town center, without going through the whole story, besides the vacant industrial, or the soon-to-be vacant industrial buildings that were there was some contamination there. TIF funds were used to clean them and to be able to get the sites developed. So it was more property-oriented, and maybe in the later years of the TIF, it was utilized by individual businesses that were coming in and doing remodels of spaces or adding something to their space or improving it. Like the Montessori school utilized TIF funds to put in a playground. A lot of smaller businesses used it to offset the cost for their signage or interior remodeling. So it was really a mix of both, to answer your question, but more oriented towards the rehabilitation of properties to meet code.
I think,
Thank you.
and correct me if I'm wrong, the TIF didn't allow build-outs in people taking on new businesses and buildings, and that was attractive to people who might have established businesses here, but it wasn't allowed under this TIF.
That's correct. A few businesses did utilize it in build-out in the sense of when they were upgrading their electric or plumbing to meet current code, but you're correct, for putting in floors and new walls and partitions and things like that, it wasn't eligible.
Just about any new business needs to do.
That's right.
Yeah, Tony, when trying to accomplish something or solve a problem, I found that trying to answer the 5 W's, the who, why, what, where, and when. So I jotted down some little things that I thought would be interesting and share with the commissioners, and thank all the people and citizens for coming today. So if we start out with the where question. So the where is, our focus is the downtown business district. and to see the benefits of small business becoming successful and taking pride in our village downtown future. That's my answer to the where. The who, I think who is involved, I think we've already answered that, but I just wanted to put it in writing for myself and share it. I think the village, the EDC, businesses, chambers, citizens, those are the who. The what? Well, I think the what is to accomplish the planning and implementing of ideas, resources, and marketing. The why? Well, why? It's about being successful, having a town known for thinking and planning ahead to become a force for successful businesses and city government. And the when, last. When? Well, we're going to start now. I think we started. Short term, I think there's a short term and there's a longer term. Short term starting now, and if we put a time limit, we'll stay now to 12 months from now. What can we do short term? Now, 12 months from now. What can be accomplished in 1 year? And if we can do that accomplishment in 1 year, we can look back and say, well, we did what we planned it out to do. Longer term, 2 to 5 years. Or it could be 2 to 3 years. But I think there should be a short term and a longer term. So, those are the 5 W's. The last one is H, is how. So the how is what we're doing now. We're learning the answers, and all the answers will come about at future meetings. And this is what we hope to do in the how. So we got the 5 W's and we got the how. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess one of my questions, when the trustees ask us to do this, suggestions on how to improve Bartlett and to get people to stop in the businesses, they were thinking, slow down the commuters, that's your customers. I think we're discovering that commuters are probably not our customers. They're not going to stop at the end of the day and do something. But in that very simple assignment they gave us, it's multi-layered, and if we come up with suggestions for them that's going to cost a lot of money, how do we know that, I mean, they could say, oh, we don't have the money to do anything like that. So I guess
That is true.
when we're coming up with suggestions, we need some sort of idea, how realistic is it that the village is going to put any money in on this plan?
Well, I think that's the task of the board to take on after you make your recommendation. As with anything that the village board does, we go through an annual budgeting process.
Right.
And every department has so much that they ask for, and it takes so much to run that. And part of the board's ultimate decision is to take your recommendations and prioritize them and direct the administration to say, okay, let's fund this, let's fund that, let's not do this, let's not do that. I wouldn't say that, obviously, anything that you do, it's going to cost money. I mean, there's very little that is going to come for free. Even if we have to use current existing resources, it's still a dollar amount of time and staff. I mean, that's one of the things that the board gets to do after you make your recommendation. It's just like a development. A developer takes that risk. You're kind of taking that, the board's going to take the risk based on your recommendation. And what comes out of your recommendation, it could be, like Tracy said, create a non-public, non-for-profit Main Street organization, or, It could be, investigate a TIF study. It could be simply, put some more money into advertising and coordinate the advertising with, the different businesses. And so those are the things that, and prioritizing them, short-term, long-term, as Robert said, those are all good ideas. But it's ultimately going to be up to the board to decide what recommendations that they take from you and to ultimately to fund them.
I think we understand that, Jim. I think it's also important that we as a committee or commission also be aware of every single resource that's available to us through either governmental agencies or even non-governmental agencies. I know that in one of our previous meetings, we had talked about having an intergovernmental exchange, bringing in our representatives from all 3 counties and from the state to find out what resources are indeed available to us. I don't think that anybody is very interested in spending $1 until we know very specifically what's available to us and how we can use those resources to, again, build a better product without making an investment of a taxpayer dollar.
That's a good point.
To Cecilia's point, our first meeting, we were charged from Kevin, basically, how do we get trained people to stop and shop? I know when I worked as a person driving, I stopped at known places, whether it was a name brand store, restaurant, whatever. When I rode the train, I always felt that I was living by the train schedule. And I think talking to people on the train, a lot of them feel that way. So when you get off, I think we kind of agree, most people, unless you're with family or with friends, you pretty much want to get in your car and go and be with those family and friends. So I think from that meeting forward, we've kind of accepted that probably not a lot of chance of enticing the Metra people, but it's like we've turned it into, how do we get people to just patronize Bartlett business more? I don't know that that's what the trustees and the mayor want us to do, but I think it's a really good thing. But like what Tracy said, like what you said, what ends up being the best return on investment? If you're going to spend money, first, is it worth it? Are you going to get money back for it? Is status quo going to be the best way? Is investing in this going to be the best way? You don't want to waste money, yet you want people to want to do things in the town. Like we had the National Night Out last week. That was wonderful. It's a fantastic, and it was free food, free everything. You can't have National Night Outs all the time. But how do you get not only Bartlett residents, but other people from elsewhere? How do you get the word of mouth out to say, well, we may not have name brand things in or downtown, but we get a lot of cool stuff here. How do you get them there? I don't have those answers, but
I would like to know, if possible, just with a show of hands, how many of the citizens that are here tonight know that there is free parking at the Metra during the week after 4 o'clock, Monday through Friday, and there is free parking all day, Saturday and Sunday? With a show of hands, how many did you know? About half. I think that's one of the most cost-effective things that we can do, is make it known to the people who live in our village that they can come downtown and park free. They don't have to find a parking space behind a restaurant that's already packed. They can park after 4 o'clock, Monday through Friday, free. Saturday and Sunday, free, all day.
Well, and I know that we brought this up a couple of meetings ago, and I want to commend Tony for making sure that was posted to the Bartlett Facebook page, and it was also the Bartletter, so we thank you for that. I guess the real question becomes, I think we'd also discussed having signage put up at the Metra lots that parking was free, Is that, and that was at the expense of the village, correct?
That would be.
At last month's meeting, we had said that there might be an RTA grant available to help fund some of these marketing and promotional efforts. Has that been looked into?
The RTA grant that we spoke of a few meetings ago is to help fund a study. That would be another study. I had mentioned you could see that on the CMAP website. Commissioner Green had asked me last month if I had reviewed any that would be similar in nature to downtown Bartlett, and the answer is yes. City of Des Plaines, Cumberland Station Area Plan, done in 2011. Irving Park Road Plan for Hanover Park, done in 2012. And a 180-page plan on downtown Mount Prospect, done in December of 2012. So that's actually, the CMAP wouldn't help pay for things as useful as signs, but it would help pay for a study where we could take a comprehensive look again at a particular area.
Are there any funds left from the IDOT donation that paid for the signs that, or the street lamps and the beautification project up and down West Bartlett Road?
No. We did pay for the Welcome to Downtown Bartlett and those signs. Those were paid out of the TIF funds.
Right.
So that sign program was part of this summary of findings report. So, but that grant basically is for what was for the street lights. The banners the village paid for, there was a public, we shared it with IDOT, so, but there isn't any more on that.
Is the notification that free parking is available to visitors to downtown, is that up on the Bartlett cable channel?
It's not at this time, no.
We can get it on there. We put it in, Tony put it on the Facebook page and the Bartletter, but it's,
That'd be free, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
Just somebody program it in.
just
fit it between the
electricity.
slides.
You have already a signage where you buy a ticket, where
Right,
you already?
that could ultimately be one of the recommendations that comes from the Economic Development Commission before.
As of now, I mean, many people who go there at 5 o'clock to buy tickets, and if there is no sign, they would still buy.
There are no signs to that effect right now.
Yeah. So that's
Is that-
one of the areas immediately I think can be thought of.
Just out of curiosity, is that available in an audio format as well for the hearing impaired? Or is there a scroll?
You mean the Metra station sign? That scrolling sign?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
They just make their train announcements, that's it, okay.
I think
They do
gentlemen
the
has a-
announcements as it's scrolling by.
Yeah. But they just do the train announcements. Yeah, right. I think that in respect to the people, like I know we have a lot to talk about, a lot of ideas, but in respect to the people that came here this evening, I would like to see us get, because they have so much information and so many suggestions, I'd love to see us get started with talking to some of the residents. Thanks, Donna.
Absolutely.
Especially the young gentleman out there who's...
I think that's kind of how your agenda's set up. We were at 4B, commission input, and then we can transition into C if you want.
Yeah, that'll conclude our commission input on the staff report this evening. Thank you. We'll move on to testimony from the interested parties in the public, which will be followed by the commission's opportunity to respond to what we heard from the public. We ask the public to keep their comments focused on suggestions and recommendations that we might make to the village board, and that you try and be as concise as possible. Limit your response to comments to 3 minutes if possible, and no more than 5. So with that, we'll take our first person comment.
Just step up to the podium, make sure the little light is on there. It should be pressed, there's a button there, the green light. Okay, and then state your name for the court reporter and address.
My buying EE Energy over on Poppy Lane. Forgive my ignorance, I've never attended such a meeting, that's why I was raising my hand, I don't know what the rules are. Listening to this discussion, and I've been to a few meetings in the past few years, it seems that the focus is right here at downtown, everything's got to be downtown Bartlett. The last few weeks, I've had the opportunity to be in a number of different communities where their downtown has a number of north-south streets, a number of east-west streets, a main thoroughfare or two or three, a lot more traffic areas for people to come in without having to go down lots of residential streets to get there. That seems to me to provide a lot more opportunity for a lot more commercial development. And a lot more commercial development, in my mind, development that would lead to more business for the individual stores, vendors, whatever, and revenue for the village. I think that's what the objective here is. So I'm just wondering, is indeed, since I'll use an old Bible term, the downtown is pretty much landlocked. Is this the right area to be putting the emphasis in? Should it perhaps be out there on the other side of 59, over by the Home Depot, somewhere else, where there is more readily available access? I could probably go on for 20, 30 minutes, but I don't want to waste time on stage. It's just on that focus. I just offer that for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Would it be appropriate for Tony or Jim to talk about all the efforts that they've made to get new businesses in that area on 59?
Sure. That particular intersection of 59 and Stearns is typically almost completely occupied. A lot of businesses that contact myself or other staff at the village, many times, actually a vast majority of the time, like to focus on that area. They like to locate, if they can, in Bartlett Commons or Brewster Creek Shopping Center or perhaps Stearns Crossing. Those areas are in DuPage County as well, so both the sales tax and the property taxes are lower. The traffic counts are anywhere from 6 to 8 times greater. So those areas, they're not ignored by the village. They're included in all our marketing materials, sent to anybody searching for a location in the village. But they're easier to sell, if you would, to a business looking in the area than the downtown area is. Besides the lower traffic counts, the Cook County property taxes are a huge impact, as well as the higher sales tax. I could go on about traffic counts, but the traffic counts here are in the 8,000 range rather than in the low 40,000 range that they have out there. The business park is a whole other area, and that's actually is a TIF district, Brewster Creek Business Park, but that's not exactly the type of shopping area that we're focusing on here, with restaurants and shops and cultural activities. So those draw a different type of business than what we're talking about here. But we do focus on all the areas of the town, just in different ways, if you would. And the downtown obviously has a lot of older properties that do require greater rehabilitation before a business can utilize them. So this discussion started back in June, where we were trying to focus on ways of bringing people who already come into the downtown area into the businesses that are already here, really. So I know that's kind of a long answer, but this particular item is specifically to focus on the downtown area rather than our business parks or the Route 59 corridor. They each have their own strengths and their own weaknesses as well.
To your point, addressing the gentleman, if I recall from our TIF meeting, in fact, we have a TIF that doesn't have a lot of activity at 59 and Lake. So, I mean, Bartlett, that came as a surprise to me. Bartlett does seem to look at different areas to see what we can do, and then if somebody wants to get interested, they do. If they don't, they don't. I mean, you look over there and say, wow, that's Bartlett, and there's nothing there, but nobody wants to do anything there either.
Right. Commissioner Russell's referring to the southwest corner of Route 59 and Lake Street. It's been a TIF district for about 9 years now, and there's been a few false starts at development out that way, but that's a very difficult corner as well to develop and requires quite a bit of off-site and on-site work. It's another subject, but that's another area that we've spent a lot of time and effort in attracting development to, right when the economy was getting worse and people weren't investing as much and people weren't building as much. So there's other areas. There's another TIF district at the corner of Route 25 and West Bartlett Road, and that's the newest one. That was formed in, I believe, 2010, and that's called the Bluff City, the Blue Heron Business Park area. So that's another future development area, and that's the last time we did a TIF study, and it was in the low $20,000 range, to answer one of your earlier questions.
Good evening, my name is Bruce Chambers, I live on Orchid Lane. It seems from the discussion that I'm listening to tonight with the downtown district, has there been any consideration given to like a high traffic generating business like Trader Joe's, for example? Because the one in Geneva is a very small shopping center. Granted, it's on a main thoroughfare, but Trader Joe's generates its own traffic. And the size of that store is very much equivalent to what was there in the Bartlett Fresh Market. And I think this is a high-income demographic relative to some other locations. That might be a business that would generate a lot of traffic to downtown. I know that there have been some consideration of taking Starbucks or Carol or something, but the comment from those businesses wasn't enough traffic. You get something that is a high generator to begin with, maybe that attracts additional business. It seems like, if we're going to try to develop downtown, that area over there could use a little bit more traffic. To see one new business is just going up the bowl. I don't know what the full name of it is, but it seems like maybe, that's an opportunity to concentrate over there and find something that's going to generate its own traffic. I know a lot of my friends don't want to go to Geneva to go to Trader Joe's. It's too far to go. So maybe an opportunity for here.
Let me throw that back to you. Let's say you were the owner of the Trader Joe's franchise, and you could choose a ready-made site in 59 where there's high traffic, or take a chance in downtown. What makes most economic sense?
Depends on what kind of incentive you might be willing to offer, because clearly this is more of a challenge to fill the location.
It is. See, that, to your point, you're right. And that's where previous big-name companies, Starbucks, whatever, we got them on 59, we got the new Dunkin' Donuts on Lake Street. They don't want to be where there is low traffic and take a chance. They want to be where there's established traffic flow, and your traffic flows through downtown are Bartlett residents. They're not everybody going through these main roads. It's hard to entice them. Even with Gorski sitting empty all these years, that's a great spot. But do you want to take a chance? I mean, if I was Trader Joe's, I'd say, it's a nice town, but I don't know if I'm going to get return on investment taking a chance and investing that kind of money just to see what happens. I'd rather take a known spot.
Well, I think the difference in that argument is that Trader Joe's is nowhere near this place, near Bartlett right now. Geneva's a long way away.
I tried getting Butera just on my own before I got an EDC. It was none of my business to do so, but I called up Butera's corporate office and said, we've got an empty store here that would be perfect, because the closest Butera is either Elgin or in Roselle. They listened, they said they'd look into it. I called them again a couple of years later. We had lovely talks, but money-wise, they need to find it being viable for them. I would think a Butera would be great in there, or a Trader Joe's. How do you get them to come? I don't know.
Well, I think, from my perspective, because I've seen numerous stores go in and out of there, I think you need to change the mix, right? And if Trader Joe's is a higher end product, it generates its own traffic, and with the access here, if you included signage to direct people off of Lake Street, or signage to direct people off of Stearns, or signage to direct people off of 59, you might have points and generate enough traffic that would help this business down there. I don't, I can't speak for the marketing costs of Trader Joe's, but they generate their own traffic, and they have a pretty loyal customer base in my experience. And it seems to me like, that would be something new and completely different. It's completely out of character with the rest of the businesses here, and it would not generate competition in and of itself with the other businesses that are here, because the mix is completely different. I think we need something that's going to attract attention. Trader Joe's is one of those stores that has a very high buzz rate, if you will, with people talking about the quality of the offerings, the margins, the deals that you can get, and they're better than the customers. So it seems to me like that might be an opportunity.
It's funny what's survived in there versus what's failed. I mean, Pasta Mia is doing great, CVS is doing fine, yet the grocery stores failed. There used to be a pharmacy in there. I mean, grocery store times two. Ace, I mean, it's like, I don't know why that shopping center doesn't generate more interest to get in somebody else.
I was going to say, Tony, Jim, have there been any discussions with any national branded organizations to enter into that area?
In Gorski Plaza, we've had discussions with a lot of different stores, nobody at the national level. We've had, the last one that was there was like a Butera type store. They're the ones that we're interested in that center. Just to answer your question, in terms of Trader Joe's, we are constantly talking to Trader Joe's and their parent company, Aldi's. Trader Joe's is, despite its kind of character as kind of a unique shopping experience, and I know the store you're talking about, they still have the same kind of demographic desires as any national chain. So they would like to be on, the major roads, and the one that you're at is at the intersection of really Randall Road and Fabian Parkway. They tend to not look into an interior town. Now, if we ever develop the Route 59 and Lake Street TIF with a developer, Trader Joe's might give it a look. That we've actually sat down with the Trader Joe's. Our village president sat down with not the current one, but previous ones, the Trader Joe's representatives in this area, and they're owned by Aldi's. And Aldi's is interested in Bartlett. It's again, Aldi's wants to be on a major road, and the whole, and the development end is, a lot of it is predicated on the property owners. And in the downtown area, there's property owners that want them, but they don't have the demographic and the traffic mix. And then on the periphery, we actually, as Mr. Nyberg said, we have land to grow. There's vacant land out there that can be developed along 59, along going further west on Route 25. We've had a bad downturn in the economy, and some of those sites, you have some issues with some of the property owners. And people have lost the property, or they're held by banks. It would be great to match those up with the right mix of people. And we have developments that we've approved that have failed. So we've been around the block with basically anybody.
You've been doing this forever. How did we get somebody like Jewel at 59 Stearns, and they're doing great, and that's on an inside street? I mean, it didn't occur to me until now. That's one really successful big brand that is inside. How did we ever get them?
Jewel has a history in the village, and it's always been successful, and that store is very successful. And it is on Stearns Road, which has a higher traffic count than the downtown. And when Jewel looked at renovating it, the village was very supportive. Worked with them to provide. We didn't provide incentives, but we approved different unique features in that development. It had the gas station. They weren't going to go without the convenience store gas station. That was kind of new at the time when it was approved. We accepted it with open arms where other towns didn't. They have an underground detention area that whole parking lot and then that was kind of a unique feature for that, because they didn't want to waste any of the surface land for detention. So we were open to those suggestions, and we've done that in other areas of the village.
That's
So,
a huge
but Jewel had
success.
a good history with the village.
I mean, that's amazing that, because you think about jewels around Chicago, most of them are on main roads, and here's one that, yeah, Stearns is main for Bartlett, but it's not main for the whole area, and
Right.
it really does good.
Well, it's also easy when you're the only game in town.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Well, don't forget Dominic's.
Jim, you mentioned Ace Hardware closing up, and if you remember, when Home Depot was built, one of the problems of having a very big store is that it does affect the smaller stores in the neighborhood, just like Walmart affects all the smaller stores in the area. So we did a good thing by getting the Home Depot, but we lost a smaller Ace Hardware. So there's always a counter effect, and things that we try to do. One of the problems is that when you get real big, it affects the mom and pop stores. So if you see other communities are thriving, but they have a lot of mom and pop stores. When I say mom and pop stores, I'm talking about just two people who want to open up a business. They're all over Bartlett, they're all over other towns. The mom and pop stores, they really don't want to get on a main street because they can't afford the rent. So they look for the smaller areas, less rent. Yeah, there's less space, there's less traffic, but they have something that people don't mind going down to, and if they have parking and if they can walk to it. I think one of the problems we have in Bartlett, and I think it's a bigger problem than people perceive, is the idea of parking downtown. There are quite a few people that I myself personally have talked to that don't know that you can park downtown for free. And it has kept them out of the downtown area, especially west of 59. If you don't commute, and you don't see any signs, out of sight, out of mind. So I think it would be very important. And I think under the shorter term goals, that would be cost effective, is to have the village, provide these signs for the people who live in the village, to know that, they can park for free down there. I think it's more, it would do a lot more good than people realize.
Oh, yeah, I mean, in one of the meetings, we did discuss about that signage, the entry of this West Bartlett Road from Route 59, and especially now that new lighting's already provided, it looks very attractive. I mean, unless there is no great signage, nobody would be looking at when they're passing. So, and as I agree with the gentleman, any business area or commercial area to be successful, one of the stores or business has to be acting as an anchor store or anchor business. We all know that. And typically any grocery store that would certainly, because that's a requirement, and I see that particular location is so ideal because surrounding there is so many residents. So Traders Joe may not be very ideal because they have a very niche market and very specific people that go there, not that all mass people, but something like Butera, something like Valley Store, something like, I don't know, but one of the anchor store, if we can work on that, of course, the office must have communicated with all different types of businesses, but that area is so ideal, especially with all that big space for the parking, and it's just center of the village. If that is going to be, a place can be created as an anchor store, crowd will be coming in, and as people come there to buy grocery, or they would then shop around, or they will have a cup of coffee, and they will have do a dinner, all sort of things will automatically start happening. I feel if we can focus also on that while we are talking all that, what are the other areas and businesses where we can work on or approach, as you have already done a meeting, couple of meetings, as you mentioned, with the Trader's Joe. But other than that, maybe, because that is a lot of presence.
I think there's some alternatives to grocery stores and Gorski's, that area there. Have you ever considered
Can I bring it back on track?
Something-
About the public
We're
one,
doing the resident.
and there's still some people out there that want to speak. Brett?
I think we're deviating from the
Okay.
intention right now. Before the next speaker comes up, let's focus on the public comments. The commissioners can make their comments following the public's input, okay? Let them speak, and then we can follow up. In response to the last person to speak, yes, to answer your question very briefly, I can tell you, yes, we have many times in the past considered trying to bring a, quote, destination business into the heart of town. And as you can see, it's not that easy to do. There's many parameters that have to be satisfied that we, at this point, probably cannot meet. So, next speaker, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tony Swanson. I'm not a resident of Bartlett. I am a commercial real estate broker. And I work across commercial lines. In other words, I deal with industrial, I deal with office, and I also deal with retail. I can tell you that everything is not rosy in DuPage County. Everything is not rosy in Kane County. Okay, so the taxes alone, okay, in Cook County is not necessarily the only answer, but there are ways in which you can address it short term. I'm not an advocate for tips, because I think tip, quite frankly, is a lazy way to try to weed your way through problem solving. Tip really does not help the residents, because you end up pushing the cost back to the residents. Okay, you starve, okay, the other municipalities, or the other municipal bodies. You starve the school districts, you starve the park districts, you starve the libraries for revenues. You generate through that real estate. I've also been an elected official on Carroll Street, on the Carroll Street Park District. So I understand how TIFs work and how we work within them and how we work with other government bodies. I also brought retail clients to your downtown area, and we've looked at it. We're well aware that you have free parking. Every downtown area has free parking. Geneva has free parking, Wheaton has free parking, St. Charles has free parking, so everybody has free parking. Carroll Street has free parking. I also worked on Gary Avenue Court at Carroll Street, and that board there thought for sure that if they build this great fountain, they can develop retail in that area. Well, it just wasn't so. And as you know, Carroll Street Park District built this rec center. You can't force a business to do something that they don't want to do. Trader Joe's is not going to move downtown. All of these ideas are great. The Wheaton area, downtown Wheaton, has been trying to do the Wheaton Theater for 9 years, and still hasn't been successful. The First Street development in St. Charles has been pretty much a failure. It's lost a lot. If you go up and down St. Charles, you see bar after bar after bar. If you're a new person looking at vacancies or bars there, if you move into the bar, you're used to the bar. So the businessman today who wants to go into any business in the retail area wants to know how they can be distinct from other businesses. But getting back to when I brought a restaurant tour to take a look at the restaurant many years ago that was leaving or had one night. I can tell you this we looked at issues of traffic, and traffic just wasn't there. We looked at issues of how well a restaurant of a certain size would be supported, and the figures just were not there. So you can't force fees. But what you can do is you can help your commercial development. Because your commercial development is not just downtown, it's not just retail. It's commercial development in industrial, as well as in those areas of where office is developing. So if you want to help the small business guy, okay, you have to help the small business guy. It's so easy to try to get a large Home Depot and give them lots of money, okay? But somebody pays the price for that. Actually, you can help the small business guy by doing something which I would suggest equalizes the playing field between DuPage County and Cook County, those areas. It will also help maintain property values. And it will particularly, I think, help also owners provide more attractive rents to attract more tenants. There's going to be some small businesses that want to be in the downtown area, but you're only going to do that by helping their pocketbooks directly. Okay? And there's ways to do that. If I would just say, just for instance, and I just played some numbers here. If I took a 1,500 square foot office condo or over in Brewster Creek, and they charge $8 a square foot. Okay. If the taxes there are $3 per square foot in Cook County, but they're $1.50, okay, in DuPage County, then that owner somehow has to pass that difference on. How can you help that particular owner? You might help him by picking up the difference between what the DuPage tax would be and what their tax would be. So therefore, it will equalize his opportunity to do business with the DuPage areas. That's how you can address specifically Cook and all of your commercial businesses horizontally, whether it be industrial, whether it be office, or whether it be retail. That's what you have to do. You have to build up the basis of all of those. Because where do your consumers come from? They come from office, and they come from industrial also. Okay? So just building up retail is not going to solve the problems. So getting back to what I was just suggesting here is that in Cook, for instance, if I'm have a gross revenue, let's say I charge $1,000 a month for 1,500 square foot place, and that's $12,000 a year. So that's my gross revenue. So in Cook, if it's $3 a square foot, I have to charge $4,500 a year in taxes. That means that my value of the property is only worth $8,500 before operating expenses. Okay? In DuPage, I take the same situation. I charge $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year. So my taxes are only $1.50. That means that I only have to pass on $22.50. Okay? So my value now is $97.50. So you accomplishes two things. One, by equalizing the playing field for your Cook County commercial people, you would actually maintain a higher value or equivalent value of the properties. And also, you would attract more people to the downtown area. Short term, that's your short-term solution.
Question, where would you propose the city, or who would come up with the difference in that cash?
Well, if you're willing to spend $25,000 to do a TIF study, and you're not really sure what the results are going to be, I would suggest that giving away or incentivizing those owners that are willing, okay, to reduce their taxes to attract new tenants would be a much better investment because it would be short term. And you can build in people here that would go normally to DuPage. So who would pay it? I guess you're all paying it because you know why? Because quite frankly, The difference is about 13% difference in value. The transfer stamps, if you pass your transfer stamps on, you get 13% less in your transfer stamps. So it would be a worthwhile investment for your overall town to do that as well. So the figures, okay, that's what it's all about. So if you're going to maintain terrace or small operating business, you've got to have put in their operating costs. So therefore, I would go to the real estate owner, in other words, the owner of the development, and say, if you're willing to reduce those costs to the new as well as current clients, it could be a short-term program. While you're doing that, we'll pay the difference. That would be a specific program that would excite some of your owners. This is the same problem we have in Wheaton, but frankly, also with my office. The rents are too damn high, okay? And we can't get landlords to understand that. We have lots of vacancies. We have lots of vacancies in St. Charles. There's lots of vacancies in Geneva. Okay? So there's no crystal ball as to if you have better traffic counts. No, I'm sorry. If you have better traffic counts, that's not going to just be a vacancy.
Have you seen towns that are in multiple county jurisdictions where they have that difference? Apply your suggested theory, and is there any anecdotal evidence of...
I think Bartlett's unique in the fact that it is kind of split there too. Okay? But I do see some higher rents even in the industrial area. Brewster Creek, they've got some vacancies over there. $10 a square foot. Okay, I think Brown's short. And in Wheaton and other areas, they're doing $8, and sometimes less. In the neighborhood. So they're passing some additional cost or something on, okay, which is creating a little bit higher rents for the small guy. There's a lot of small contractors who are either downsizing or who maybe live in Wayne and want to have a place in Brewster Creek and are looking at the numbers, and because of the economy, it's so tight. Okay, they've got to get it. So anything you can encourage a property owner to pass and give them some kind of motivation or incentive, equalize that playing field, it will help you tremendously. I mean, all I can tell you is, I work with it every day, and I know the buyers, sellers, tenants, landlords. Okay? And the other thing is that we'll maintain the value of your properties. You want to do that. Questions for the
Are there any other nearby communities who are doing what you just suggested?
No, they're not. No. I talked to some other economic development.
Why aren't they?
Well, I'll tell you, well, for instance, Wheaton is passing $10,000 as an incentive to retailers for the tenant. Okay, I said, well, what are you doing for the guy that owns the property? He's the one that's setting the rates. The $10,000, quite frankly, has been a iffy success. I can tell you numerous schools downtown Wheaton that have a big sign up there, $10,000. Okay, we're going to give you if you move in here, and yet they'll go someplace else that doesn't have $10,000. Okay, because the rent is less. Downtown area. I heard one person quote, and this is an elected or not elected, but staff who say the Denard Square turns over a restaurant once every 3 years. So if they're not ready to fill that vacancy, they not only starve for sales revenue, or sales generating revenue, but they also, can affect other businesses in that area. So it's a challenge that every community is facing. And you have to take some short-term, decisive action that's going to improve your situation.
Well, in a much different economy, didn't towns like Elk Grove and Schaumburg do that? I mean, I know, having worked at Motorola for 20 years, when Motorola moved from Chicago there, they got a 20-year no tax deal. Across the street, Unical got the same deal. Unical's gone. Motorola, when I worked for them, was a 200,000 employee company. Now they're owned by Google. And it's substantially downscaled, and they constantly have to reinvent themselves. On the Unical property is now a strip mall,
I think Schaumburg probably has made a lot of revenue off a lot of these things, but they probably had to reinvent themselves so many times over just to keep this stuff going, all the dead dealers along Gulf Road. So I can see incentivizing can be good, but I can also see it being a double-edged sword.
Well, in order for it not to be a double-edged sword, okay, you have to be on top of the quote. Okay, in other words, you have to say, I'm willing to pick up this difference in tax for you for a period of time or while you're doing it. And you have to show me that you're providing that incentive, okay, to attract people in the area, as well as keep good tenants here, good businesses. It'll help you on both ends. But if they're not showing you the difference, and they're not passing that on, then don't pass it on to them.
Well, I think the frightening issue comes for reassessment in Cook County. We had a business owner here last year that said that his real estate taxes for his small business went up over $4,000. And I think that, again, going back to the issue of a double-edged sword, is who then is on the hook for that differential once a county reassesses a business and taxes go up 5%, 6%, 10%. And I don't know that that's a risk that the village would be interested in.
You can't control what happens. We can't control what happens to the patient. Okay? You can only control what happens to the patient. And that means that you have to do something.
Well, we realize that. Hence the discussion of I agree, and we're not, I'm sorry, pardon me.
Let's not get off the path now, we're still, let's let the gentleman finish up and
But I
then...
mean, you can't control the assessors. So that's going to be a situation, and that means that you have to evaluate it on a frequent basis, which means that your program has to be out there and has to be dynamic. Okay? And if people don't participate, they don't get the report. Okay? It's like a market-driven incentive.
Thank you for your comments, we appreciate them. We're going to take a break at 8:30, so we're getting close. If we have another person that wants to speak, you can do so now, but try and keep your comments brief so that we can take an 8:30 break. Okay, it would appear we don't have any more public comments, and 2 minutes. You want to take a break now? Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break. We'll be back here around 8:30.
You got something to do next to me.
How'd you get out there? How did you get out there?
The office.
Oh, yeah, he presents the case. It's got one flaw.
We'll resume where we left off.
that good. All the other towns have been doing that.
Am I not on? Okay. I guess nobody heard what I said before that. Okay, we'll pick up where we left off. Do we have any more comments from the public? Would anybody like to make any statements? Okay, it appears that the public comment portion of the meeting is over with, and now the commissioners will have a chance to briefly respond to anything we've heard tonight.
Yeah, Jerry, I'd like to maybe...
Yes, please just step up.
My name is Marianne Nyberg, related to Larry Nyberg. I live on Poppy Lane in Bartlett.
I worked with you. I thought you looked familiar.
And what I'd like to know is, we've had a lot of businesses, big, medium, small, come into the downtown Bartlett area, and then they leave. And what I'd like to know is, what are we doing to find out why they're leaving? What are we doing as they go along in their business life to help them market their business, grow their business, give them financial counseling. A lot of small businesses are just that, small businesses, but they don't have marketing skills or good business skills. If we want our community to grow, and as that gentleman spoke to before, we have to do things to help them be here. I would love to see in Bartlett a small business, a shoemaker. You know, where do I go to get my shoes repaired? Bloomingdale? Or I ask my friend, we go to Nordstrom's. You buy your shoes at Nordstrom's, they'll repair them forever. So I'd like to understand our overall concept. Keep business in Bartlett. I see that sign, buy Bartlett, buy in Bartlett. But what are we, as a community, as a government, doing to help those businesses stay here?
There are things the village is doing, which I think Tony can probably help you better understand. We do some marketing.
But I mean, ongoing, you know.
We have ongoing programs to
But, I mean, we
help some of
talked
the
to
businesses
Cecilia,
out.
that part of the council goes out maybe once a year or twice a year to touch all the businesses. That's not enough. You need to be there all the time. Small businesses are not always business savvy.
Right, we have a business visitation program where we regularly do visit with businesses throughout the community. And just to be specific on one of the comments brought up earlier by one of these gentlemen, that's throughout the entire village. That's just not the downtown area. That's out in the business park, to retailers, restaurants, service providers throughout the whole village. So that's something myself as a staff person and the commissioners are always open to doing. Unfortunately, more than 9 times out of 10, the businesses don't tell you that they're suffering so bad that they're about to close. Sometimes we find out about it once they are closed. Others do reach out. Over the years, many have reached out, including Ovi's Pub and an Escafe and La Dolce Vita restaurant, mostly restaurants, which is a difficult business and risky, to say the least. And by the time a lot of them reach out, they're in such debt or dire straits, there's not much counseling or marketing that we can do to save a restaurant that's failing. We help them with advertising. Somebody mentioned the Discover Bartlett page earlier that's growing pretty quickly, and the businesses are appreciative of us promoting them in that. The past 3 or 4 Decembers, the EDC has worked on doing an insert in the BART letter. I hope people have seen it. It offers any business in town the opportunity to put a coupon in the BART letter. I think Mike Sobel has put one in before for your business, and a couple of other businesses have had pretty good responses from that. We do a lot of different...
But it just seems like we're losing
sure.
more that are coming in.
There are other resources, too, besides the village that we hope and encourage. As a banker in town, quite frankly, I often talk to business owners, and in addition to, asking them to contact Tony for assistance, I often refer people over to the chamber office, because there are marketing and there are ways for them to learn to grow their business through the chamber. I often refer people over to the Elgin Community College also for their Small Business Development Center, because that's a great resource and it's free. And they help businesses write business plans. They help them with financial analysis. And so as a business owner, you do have to take some of your own initiative as a business owner to grow your business and to maintain it and to properly manage it. And there are resources, free resources, that really are available if they reach out. And like Tony said, a lot of times businesses don't tell you that they're in trouble until it's too far gone to help. Because otherwise they'll tell you that everything is okay, we're doing really great, but then all of a sudden we know that they're gone. But there are a lot of free resources, and I, talk all the time about trying to get, try to get the businesses connected to those advice sources for them.
Again, I would just like to understand why so many leave Bartlett.
I think Bartlett's not unique. I think if you go to any town in the surrounding area, you will find that there are more businesses closing than opening over the past 5 years. So Bartlett's not unique in that, and as a small business owner, I see a lot of people failing. It's the economic climate. It's not that Bartlett is turning their back on them or anything like that. There's always resources out there. I know whenever I've called the village, they're always happy to help. And as Donna said, there are tons of free resources for small business owners to use. The problem is a lot of them are stubborn, and they won't admit the problem until it's too late.
At least Bartlett didn't do what Hanover Park did. They bought that whole plaza on Barrington Road, and now that's Hanover Park's problem. And it sits empty. That's a big chunk of real estate.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any more comments from the public? If not, the commission can now discuss what we've heard, and,
Gary, can I start us off? I'd like to steal an idea from, a little bit of the idea from Robert, and talk about, let's kind of start putting down the things we want to recommend. And I'd like to just start the list. It doesn't have to be the list that's going to get recommended, but let's start a list, a working list that we can get together so we can actually deliver something to the board and say, okay, here's what we think. I kind of just jotted down some stuff. Again, my list is not, the list. It's just a place to start. So for short-term things that we can do, I have 3 different categories. Short-term, medium, which is like 12 months, and then long, which is 24 plus. And maybe for short-term stuff, we can do parking, the free parking signs that we talked about. We can maybe advertise the free parking, maybe like in the village newsletters, maybe local businesses somehow can advertise it. Possibly the sandwich boards that Metra has agreed that we could probably do. And maybe add more events. That was brought up in the meeting last time by a couple of other people that had spoke publicly. Maybe we can add car shows, things like that. And I know Bruce at Banbury Fair would, love to see stuff like that as well. And he agreed that it was helpful, and he would help put events like that on. Sure.
I think that's a very good list you just came up with to start with.
Medium, I think clean up the buildings, yards, and the downtown businesses. I think getting them to do that. I know that there's some blighted areas after somebody brought that up in last month's meeting. I kind of paid more attention to it, noticed it. There's definitely weeds growing all over in the back, and, some of the other areas that need to be cleaned up. So maybe that's something that we can get on in the next 12 months and have the businesses clean up. Bike riders, kind of just not maybe signage pointing people to downtown Bartlett. I think that's an inexpensive way to at least show people, and kind of low risk, small reward maybe that we can get. Maybe see what other items the village can do to market Bartlett. And I know, Tony, that you do that, trying to go to trade shows and things like that, but maybe look into other alternatives. What other ways are there to market the village? There's 2 things that are near and dear to my heart that I'd add to this list. The first is changing the sign codes to be similar to surrounding areas. The sign codes in Bartlett are extremely stringent and allow for very small signs. I also like to see more consistent enforcement of the sign codes, because we have a lot of businesses that are unhappy of inconsistent enforcement. For the long term, on my list at least, I have the business relocation in key areas. I know somebody brought up maybe, long term, could we get like a Flexonics to kind of move into a more industrial area and use that space to develop it more commercially? Rework traffic patterns, and I don't mean changing the streets. I think another resident had suggested that maybe change the layout of some of the items downtown, eliminate some parking and creating a more shopper-friendly area. Maybe that's something in the long term that might help. Another idea I thought would be relocating AT&T in the long term. It's not very, consumer-friendly to have that building there. And it's a very good spot probably for retail shops, et cetera, to be. Just 3 more items. The train pickup drop-off at the first spot, maybe see if that's a possibility with Metra. It seems that enough residents seem to think that that would help. And again, that's I think a low-risk possible reward. And I think there should be maybe some more concentration, and I'm sure you're concentrating on the development of the two TIFs, the Route 20 and the Route 25, and working hard and maybe making more awareness that they're out there, and try to work on get those done as a long-term goal. So that's what I had for my list.
Actually, I had done the same thing, which was I kind of broke it down into short-term, long-term, like major expenses, things that didn't cost very much. And I had a lot of the same ideas that you did. One of the additions to the short-term quick solutions that wouldn't cost anything is promo in the train station. Somebody had suggested that the chamber could host a business expo in the station in the morning for the commuters. That seemed to be a great idea. I think we should harness some of the energy that young lady had from the coffee shop. She had a lot of great ideas, and I highly encourage the chamber office to reach out to the coffee shop folks and try and build a relationship and get her pulled into even the board, with the chamber, and get her, she has a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of great ideas. Another one that she had was to install the TV in the train station and the coffee shop to promote the community. There was, hopefully that wouldn't conflict with the clear, whatever, the one that Metra uses. Again, more community events in the downtown area. There was a comment about maintaining the upkeep of the train station. That seems to be that there were some issues on, somebody brought in pictures of the condition of the outside of the train station, that it's not being properly maintained. Another option was to reach out to Elgin Community College and their Spartan Group marketing that both the Park District and I know some of the local businesses in town have used, because they help give you a marketing plan that's free. It's a program for their students, and that they come in and they do it for free. Another free item was to collect the email addresses and forward the info to residents about upcoming events and features in the farmers markets and the heritage days, things like that. Cheap things that are going to help to promote things. Reaching out to CMAP to see if there was anything that we could, anything that they had to offer to us. One of the concerns was making it pedestrian-friendly on Western Avenue over by, where people are at Western, crossing West Bartlett Road. I can tell you, I sat there for 5 minutes this evening trying to get across the street, and it was because the commuters were, it was a busy train time. And you can, for myself who lives over in that area, I can tell you that the traffic pattern goes down Western now, so that people don't have to go down Main Street, so that they can avoid a couple of stoplights. So if you go down Western, you will have traffic backed up all the way to North Avenue at some of those train times. Adjust the traffic flow and the traffic lights was a suggestion that somebody had made. Let's see, I'll leave it at that for right now. Thanks. I did have the bigger issue I had was continuing the roadscape down Oak Avenue. Somebody had mentioned something about, we've got the nice lampposts and everything down Main Street, and then we go down West Bartlett, and that we should continue that identity down on Oak Avenue. That'll be a long-term major. That's all.
Well, I have a lot of the same ideas as you two, and then to take one even further, Terry's was a pedestrian plaza where there would be special events going on regularly scheduled, not like once, twice, 3 times a year. There might be something big going on downtown, but to have a plaza, and this is long-term because I know it would cost some money, that would have almost like a band shell or a platform for performers, and benches and tables for people together. Bartlett needs in downtown a gathering spot for entertainment, for visiting with each other, and I think that would go to our first charge. How do you slow down people who are coming through Bartlett? You've got to have something for them to go to. So that's long-term, but some sort of pedestrian plaza with entertainment capabilities.
That was interesting when Terry Witt brought that up. I hadn't thought about that before, but the idea of having, a Dixieland Jazz Band or classical musicians rotating, and people suddenly start to notice, hey, we've got this music going on here, and it makes you slow down. It makes you stop and notice, and then you notice business.
Yeah, I don't know that it's done in the United States very much, but in Europe, there are buskers who are musicians or performers who are in large cities or small cities just entertaining on the corner with their case open.
They do that downtown Chicago. When I worked downtown Chicago, I saw many of them. I don't know if they were legal, but they were doing it.
Yeah, these are legal.
It's interesting, Cecilia, what you mentioned, because this was also part of the summary of findings from the 2010 Bartlett Town Center, and they mentioned making use of that space just north where it is, I think, open enough for some short-term,
Right.
kind of what you mentioned, what Jim mentioned, is very small performance, one or two people, and that will draw people. Live music really draws people. And from some of my other experiences within Bartlett, we'd have to, of course, make sure that they get screened. There's a lot of people who are good musicians, maybe not going to make it professionally, but will make people stop and appreciate it. And that could lead to, if we do want to do something a little bit more permanent in terms of, in here they talk about a small seating venue for something like that. But I think we've just heard that two other communities, their theaters are not doing that great, so that's...
It's a risk, but if you have something that isn't a building, but a gathering spot, might work.
Well, I'm a big believer in both of our commissioners here, and what they're talking about is having events planned and things happening downtown, making it more vibrant. I think the funding for this kind of thing, and there has to be money coming for these kind of events that would be planned most likely by the village or whoever else would be interested in planning the events. The funding for that, I would like to see a TIF district be made, especially for the marketing and funding of events and programs, especially for the downtown district, and specifically for the downtown district.
And I also think something that might help that happen is a lot of villages have a cultural and tourism commission that actually, plans these things, not just an advisory board, but they are hands-on planning these types of things downtown.
I agree. I think that's very important.
And then you would have a group that whose responsibility it was.
Exactly. I think the people involved, whether it's the people you're talking about or whoever it is, should be someone that does that or is doing that. We should get someone that does planning events. I mean, I don't know if there's anybody in the village that does that, but...
The closest thing we probably have to it is, we have Cecilia. No, but in our historic preservation officer or coordinator
I
who
do
does...
two big festivals a year in Bartlett.
You do the arts festival and, Heritage Days and, but when you ask about the village, the closest thing we have would be the person who programs our History Center and does this museum, and she schedules different...
But I think we need a different entity, a separate entity.
Yes, you're talking about a separate...
A commission or a committee that is funded. It could be funded by the village plus private funds.
Cecilia?
Yes.
And the only reason I'm asking you this question is because of where you work. One of the ways we could maybe fund this too is looking into grants.
Yes.
What type of art grants are out there to create spaces for art performance?
There are grants that, like we were talking about earlier, that's a private entity like Arts and Bartlett that teams up with a municipality. Usually those are large grants and often for planning, not for building, but there are grants with the private and municipal partnerships. Some of them you can't apply unless you do have a municipality that will go along with you.
Well, I think for some of the short-term events I had in mind would be things like, where the people will do it for no fee.
Right.
Because there's a lot of people like that. One of the ways I've seen some places successfully attract a crowd that itself will continue to try and get people to come is when you start to have the children to do the performances. Remember that maybe they're going to do a tumbling event, maybe they're going to do a solo, if you have some children taking cello, violin, those things, and the next thing you know, they're telling their friends, grandma and grandpa, come, and voila, we've had a no-cost, quick-to-do event, as well as what you mentioned, some of those grant-based events, but I know you got to write a grant, and that has to go through processing.
That's big, because just what he's saying. Last week, when John Garcia did the thing on Bartlett, what did he feature? The BMX, and he mentioned the tumbling. I mean, stuff like that, it gets around. Having art and cultural things that are not something different from the norm, that maybe make people stop and take notice.
That's why I think you need someone specific who's doing, they're probably already in the business of getting events done, such as the big band or the small band or the name people that draw to the area, someone who's an events coordinator already in some area or some town or private, someone who knows how to get the events and the people that we want to draw to the downtown area, and does that for a living. I mean, I think it should be somebody who does that for a living, doing it now for a living.
Well, I think our commission doesn't really need to worry about the nuts and bolts of how to get it done. The idea is to put the ideas in front of the village board and let them decide if they want to do them, and then they figure out.
And I think a good start.
Because I agree with you, you got to have somebody that knows what they're doing to get it done. But
And I think a good
That's
start
exactly
would
my
be
point.
to appoint a cultural and tourism commission and populate it with people. I can name 6 people right now that I know that would be good members of that, who have the know-how to get those things done.
To that, are you talking specifically just knowing about cultural?
No.
To that end,
Who have the connections and the knowledge.
We're on the same page.
Yeah.
Jim and Tony, to that end, getting word out about events that we have. I've noticed in the latest Bartlett, on the Discover Bartlett page, etc., there's a lot of push to say, get on our mailing list. What kind of feedback have you heard back from your average Bartlett citizen? Is there a lot of interest in signing up for that to be put on the email blast?
It just came out recently, so there has been a little bit. I administer the Facebook page. I can tell you it's gained quite a few likes in the last couple of weeks, and I'm happy that it's featured in the Bartlett this month. So that is, as everybody's been saying here, that's a quick and cheap and easy way to reach out to our own residents here, and that's something that is growing, and it is people are signing up for that.
Oh, we've got a couple nice things. We've got the Heritage Days. We have National Night Out. We're never going to be in Naperville and have Rib Fest. But maybe along that line, is there something that's really special about Bartlett that nobody's ever tapped into that could be a signature event for Bartlett? I don't know.
The Heritage Days group is striving to make that happen for that particular event. It's still, I think it's going in its 4th year. Cecilia could speak to that better than I could, but that was the goal of that group, the Arts Festival, the Heritage Days. Those are some of the signature events in the town, and the street dance as well.
And I think we have to, as we talked about before, look at our assets. Yeah, we do have a charming downtown. We have historical homes. And when I talk about tourism, people might say, oh, Bartlett doesn't have any tourism potential. But, you know, there are small tours that might stop in Bartlett if Pam could take them on a trolley through the historical part of Bartlett and talk about the architecture and the founders of Bartlett. BAPS temple out there, that should have, tourism buses stopping at that. And if we could market that through our Tourism and Cultural Commission, I think we could get people not to just go to BAPS, but to come downtown to have lunch.
Well, Celia, this goes back to what I've been talking about for the last 2 meetings. Our resources are also the Arts in Bartlett, the Historical Society, Tri-Village Garden Club, and I think those are the organizations that really need to be, representatives from those organizations need to be a part of the Cultural Commission. And I think with that's a commission that could then be charged in creating events that would attract not just people to come in and tour the historical homes, but doing an outreach to, the big societies, the train collectors and the quilting guilds that come to small town destinations to enjoy their craft and, enjoy some of that charm. I think that the Arts in Bartlett has done an exceptional job with the event, the art fair that's held in June, and I think given the chance and the right partnership, I think that Bartlett would benefit again by that government and non-government partnership. And again, it's low-lying fruit. I think there's a lot of
And Jeff is
interest.
right about children. Anything you do for children in Bartlett or have children involved is a big success. We have 100 kids a week coming through the Arts Center for lessons. That never existed before.
Start showing their work.
I certainly think that seed money would,
Afternoon out at that, the spot just over on the other side of the building. I'm sorry. Saying that would be a great idea to just share some of their artwork, on a Friday afternoon when the farmer's market is going on. People are going to walk over there and come down and go to the farmer's market.
They do a 2 shows a year up on the second floor, which no one knows about. The art gallery on the second floor of Village Hall. Children's art are featured at least once a year up there.
What
But
do we
there's
think
a
our
lot of
next step should
possibilities if we just had a central committee who was charged with that task.
So what do we think our next step should be?
Sounds like you might have some thoughts.
What's that?
Sounds like you might have some thoughts. Sounds like you might have some thoughts.
Tony, are you putting this down as our list of recommendations now?
Yeah, I'm taking notes on the recommendations, Jim is, and also we have our court
reporter
reporter
is doing a great
taking
job.
down every word.
Writing down if you guys are talking in the microphone.
We, yeah,
Yes.
right.
You hear me?
I think maybe the next time we convene, we'll have a written copy of all this, and we all will have time to reflect on it and look at it, and I'm sure there's some opportunities and things that we've missed, and some ideas that might pop into our heads, and maybe the next meeting, maybe one of our agenda items should be to go over that list, and let's, A, determine a timeline when we're going to submit it to the village trustees, and B, let's work on hammering out the final list that we're going to hand to them.
Yeah, but I think the list has to be fairly short in that we can't just throw in, 50 things that we would like them to do. I think we've got to prioritize and make some real strong suggestions.
I agree.
On just a few.
I like that idea.
Tony, do you have a set figure in mind on how many items? I think we could come up with 50 if we had.
I did, I wasn't counting. It seems like there's about 20 or so, and some of them can be consolidated, like signage issues and things like that, so,
I wouldn't worry
Yeah.
about, that
Yeah.
when you hammer it out, that's when we can come, the more concise list, but certainly throw out ideas, and at the next meeting, you can throw out more ideas, and then we can eventually, it'll evolve into a document that'll be, prioritized by you, and then if you want to keep it as short, medium, and long-term, that's certainly a reasonable way to do it, and then it'll, make a motion and then vote on it, and then it'll be put in a final report to the board.
Has Kevin asked, like, are they done yet, or has he?
No,
Okay, so he's willing to wait until we're ready?
I think the mayor and the board want input from all of you and the residents and commuters. I think that as long as there's input and it's valuable, I don't think there's anything he's going to say, let's end this. I think
It seems we're at a point now where we're starting to formulate a list.
Yeah.
Do you foresee it as possible to come up with a conclusion that we can offer to the board next month, or do we have to discuss it at the next meeting and then at the subsequent meeting make a proposal?
If
You think it's possible we can wrap
it's
it up
ended next month,
next meeting?
with the newspaper articles, you could have 50 more people in here next month, and I think you don't want to, not take input from everybody. If things starting to get, as when I go to a lot of public hearings, and when things are starting to get redundant, the chairman will say that. I haven't seen too much redundancy. I've seen there's a lot of common themes, and I certainly think that as long as there's positive input and unique input, you can go with it. I don't think, if you can get it done next month, fine.
Next month will represent our third
Yeah.
month of discussion.
It sounds like there's a pretty good list.
Does anybody
right?
see it not reasonable to conclude at that point and make a recommendation, or any need to prolong it anymore?
At some point, we need to start
At some point, we have to
visions
stop
and deliver
discussion
something.
and actually make a
That's right.
decision.
Can-
Yeah, if you can do it next month, that's great.
So I think we're all pretty much agreed we can kind of set a goal to conclude the matter next month.
Great.
So you'll get a list prior to that as early as possible to us so we can look at it.
Our expert court reporter will get these minutes done, and it will be in the minutes. We will not, at this point, it will be in the minutes. We can put together, try to encapsulate that, but that'll be what we'll do.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay,
Is there any new business?
I think we can, pardon?
Is there any new business?
Yeah, we can move on to new business now, the next agenda item, and,
I really don't have any new business, Tony.
I don't have new business to report.
okay, that quickly resolves that issue. We can adjourn then. Do we have a motion?
A motion that we adjourn.
A second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.